Tell me what do you understand about cloud security and how would you implement it in AWS?
Sir, security is one of the important feature which we have to look out for because we have our applications running in the cloud. A lot of things are going out, and securing it is a major factor because there would be vulnerabilities out there where attackers might get into that, and it would be a huge risk because there are a lot of people and a lot of resources will be done in that. One of the thing which I can get into is one of the famous is encryption and decryption. That is one
Mhm.
of the thing which we can look out for, where you can have a security keys enabled with the encrypted side, and one the person who's going to decrypt it would be having the other security part key of that. So once it's decrypted, then only the other person can access it. It's one of the most important feature which has to be implemented, not only in cloud, in most of all the projects we deal with.
Okay. Do you have any idea about how the single sign-on functionality works?
No, sir, I don't have
SAML
that.
authentications, OAuth.
I know about authorization tokens, which would
Yep.
be using for like authorization basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we would be generating a OAuth token basically, and that OAuth token would be present only with the person who's going to be accessing it. So that token developer and the person who can access only they would be having that configuration.
And what's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS?
So HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, whereas HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol plus S stands for the security thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we believe that it's not believing, it's like fact that HTTP is more secure than HTTP. Why? Because they use SSL and TLS certificates in that. So based with the configuration of SSL and TLS certificates in HTTPS, it makes us an insecure network a more securable. So you have any transaction going on, this HTTPS would be more preferable than your HTTP.
And when you have an SSL incoming connection, where do you terminate it in terms of your cloud boundary? Okay, all right. Do you have any idea about routing tables?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me what are routing tables.
So there are example, there are two devices, and I have to send a particular like there would be a source and destination which would be stored in the routing table. Like what is the source and to which we have to send that particular packet to, and that routing table would be storing all the information of which are the source, which are the destination it has to send the particular data into, and what are the data packets. Table would be efficient is like example now I want to send a particular packet from A to D. If I go into a routing table, I'll be having idea like, oh, the destination is present there. So that particular IP have to send the data packet to that. So that
Okay.
would be helping us in
So
that.
I give you a scenario now. If you install a web application on an EC2 instance and
Okay.
you're trying to hit the external endpoint,
Okay.
but you are getting some sort of error, what are the different types of errors that you can get and what are the probable cause for it?
So one of the thing which I have dealt with is that the main thing is inbound rules. We haven't opened that particular port because due to which we are not able to access that particular application which is running on that particular port. Example, I have exposed a port called 5000, and when I'm trying to hit like web page is not loading, it will be completely no network connection, something like that error we would be getting at. Once we go and in AWS, if we go and open that particular port by giving the TCP protocol, HTTP protocol, or you can even open all the ports, but it is not the secure way to do it. But in order to just access it, we can do that. In order to make it secure, I have dealt with one of project Nginx. It's reverse proxy based. That is the best thing we can use out because opening the ports would be leading to security vulnerabilities. In order to overcome that issue, Nginx would be playing a good role where it has a function of reverse proxy. With the help of reverse proxy, we can dealt with it.
Okay. And what do you understand by NACLs?
I have an idea. Hackers.
Network access control lists? That's all right. Yep. Okay. Now, have you used any sort of database?
Yeah, sir.
Yes, have
MongoDB,
you used RDS?
RDS also.
Have you used any NoSQL database?
No, sir. I have used DynamoDB and MongoDB. That's it. And
Can you
MySQL
tell
also
me
have
a
used.
few differences between RDS and DynamoDB?
Sir, it's a key value based in a DynamoDB where you use where will be key associated with the data. So whatever we store is a key value there. Here we don't have that kind of a thing. In key value based, we don't
Mm-hmm.
format it. And what we generally believe is that it's quite easy. MongoDB is quite easy to implement and we'll be having a structured way of format basically. Whereas in RDS, we don't have that structured based of a query.
Okay. All right. So, and which of these databases are bound by a VPC or both of them? All right. So now tell me something about Git. You must have used Git.
Yeah, sir, I have used.
What sort of branching strategy have you used?
Can you give me any scenario?
All right. So you do have master branch,
Yeah,
you do have projects branches, you do have release branches, you
yeah.
do have task-based branches. So
Hmm.
can you give me an overall holistic view of how these branches are based off?
Sir, generally, for any update we want to push into, we'll be having we'll be designing, building up our own branches where each feature we're going to add into that branch. And in case there would be a different release branch where all the deployment parts takes place, so that would be handled only by the main administrator who's going to give access for that. So example, now I have a feature branch called A, there I would be developing a particular feature. Example, I have to develop a drop down menu in my user interface. I have developed that in my feature branch A, and then in order to project it in my production environment, I would have to send a merge request to my main branch, that is the branch release branch. So once the merge request is accepted by the administrator, that would be reflecting in my production environment. So for each and every feature, I'll be developing my feature patch. Why I do that is that to have this independency. In case of any error, I can get to know this branch is causing me error. I can go and fix the error there. So it helps me to do this basically.
All right. So I also see that you have worked on Docker and Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Tell me, why do we use Kubernetes? What's the need for it?
Sir, the thing is that what generally if you deploy through Docker, the thing is that in case if my container is having some issue and it gets off top or it's off state, that time the complete application is down. We can't resume it, or we have to again manually go and configure it. Whereas this Kubernetes was developed was the main reason behind this. Why? Because Kubernetes has a lot of features like auto scaling, auto replication, and it has like downtime automate in case if there is a roll of rollback updates, and there are a lot of features which Kubernetes has which doesn't Docker doesn't have. And that's why due to this a lot of enormous features which Kubernetes provides, most of the IT standards are meant to be using Kubernetes right now.
Okay. And in Kubernetes, you would see two types of files, and I'll name them as deployment.yamls and service.yamls. Can you
Yeah,
tell
sure.
me the base contents of each one of them and why are they even different?
Deployment and service is completely different. So what is a service is that it enables us to communicate basically. You have different pods running in, and you want to establish communication. Or as a client, I want to access particular pod. We have like node port address, cluster IP, and load balancer, external name service. These are the four types of services basically. So we have different based on the use cases. We can use the particular service. So this comes to service part, and mainly we use label and selectors when it comes to deployment and service, because now once you have defined a deployment, you will be having a label associated with it. In order to generate a service or write a service to particular deployment, we use a selector. So that would be just a name based scenario in order to identify which particular deployment part I'm targeting to. When it comes to deployment part, I'll be defining my number of replica sets. I will be defining my pod configurations, what all it should contain, and images. I will be even defining the image pool policy. Those are the things which will be defined in the deployment part.
Okay. Uh, and you have also worked in Ansible as well, right?
Yeah, so configuration.
Okay. Tell me why Ansible is used.
So the main application of Ansible is configuration management. Example, I am a IT. I want to push. I want to enable downloading of Docker in all my slave nodes, slave machines. I have around 10 to, I can't go and manually install all the 10 slave machines Docker. So in order to overcome this, configuration management is being provided by Ansible, where by being a master node, I can sit on the master node. I can push all the required dependency of the Docker to all the 10 other machines. So that
Mhm.
Docker will be downloaded in all the other 10 machines. So it basically works on push-based mechanism.
All right. Have you used Terraform?
No, sir, I haven't used. I know I have little bit idea on that. That's it.
Okay, that's all right. I'll not be asking questions on it then. Tell me about what do you like a holistic view of what do you understand by DevOps? Why was even DevOps introduced?
Sir, what I understand, it generally stands for development and operational team. Why was it done is that back in time, there was an issue between the development team and the operation team. A developer used to write a code, and that would be pushed onto the operation team. Sometimes it was not to work because of the required dependencies was not there. There was no required system requirements which has to be met. So there's a lot of issues between the development and the operational team. The main DevOps was to bridge the gap between the development and the operational team. DevOps came up with the tools. We have Docker, which mainly solve the issue. where we like the developer would put his code, mention all his required dependency, what all things has to be downloaded before in order to run this application, which all ports you have to mention. Everything would be mentioned in the Docker file, push on with the code in the Git repository, and that would be pulled by the operation team. Then he would be knowing, example, now I'm running a Python application. These are the dependencies which are required to run this application, and I have to expose this port is been exposed already, so I have to expose this port. So everything would be a detailed hand knowledge for operation team. This
Mhm.
discrepancy, this gap was completely filled with the help of DevOps.
And you must have heard this sentence that DevOps is a cultural shift.
Yeah,
What do you mean by that?
the same thing as I mentioned you. There was a lot of this problem and all was facing in the back in time, and this DevOps as it came to the market, it completely changed the culture of the IT industry. Now most of the things are happening in just in automation kind of a thing. Just on one click, the complete automation takes place. And when it comes to CI/CD, developer pushes the code, it builds up the Docker image, pushes it into the Docker hub. From there, I'm just deploying directly on my EC2 or anywhere that I want. The complete automation part takes place now. Before, each and every step has to be dealt with a single person. Now a single automation click would help you to complete workflow of a single thing. So most of the task, most of the work has been reduced. And even the Kubernetes part, such a fantastic feature of auto healing and auto scaling. Now example, traffic increases, whole like example, if traffic the load cannot be balanced with each pod, at time what happen, a new pod is created by itself.
Mhm.
Before manually configuration, manual person should keep on tracking that suddenly traffic increases, there we have to go and create a different thing to accommodate it. Now the auto scaling part dealt with the Kubernetes completely changed the cultural shift of our industry.
Okay.
That's
Now,
what I believe.
in terms of DevOps,
Yeah,
there's a continuous feedback loop from operations to development.
yeah, sir.
How does that happen?
So basically, now as an example, have some button running on my user interface. Now, according to my in my local, it's running fine. There is no issues with that. I have just posted once it is in the staging environment. There, the operation team find out that this particular button is not working out. It's taking me to some other page. So that feedback, that what happened, that particular thing would be pushed back to the developer. That loop will be come back to the developer, and the feedback will be given to him that basically this button is not working based on our functionality, based on our requirements. You have to sort it out that. So that
All right.
loop would come back to developer and developer would move on that.
Can you think of a scenario where Git can be used in this?
Okay. So basically what I think is that I would be developing and pushing the code into the Git, and that particular changes like where the operation team finds it out, he would be reverting back to the development team, and development would again fetch the code and perform the operation, something like that.
All right. Okay. Now, tell me something about the types of CI/CD pipelines that you have built,
Okay.
and what are the challenges that you faced initially?
So the main challenge I faced was to install Jenkins. Like there was lot of like blogs and posts, like different YouTube channels which I had referred to, were having their own kind of a thing. Like if you do this, follow these steps, it will install in that. It was not working out to me on my EC2. I don't know why. I felt a lot of issue with that, dealing with that. I referred Stack Overflow, got out with that. It took me literally one day to just solve that, install Jenkins. So there I faced a lot of issue with Jenkins. And other thing is that if you forget your password in Jenkins, it's going to be very difficult to again get it back. Because I have faced sometimes I forgot my password of my Jenkins, and it took me literally to again download it and install it. It took me again one day to do that. So I just prefer everyone to just remember your Jenkins password and username.
Okay, cool.
Generally, I just build freestyle pipelines only. Uh,
Okay, freestyle. Have you any understanding of multi-branch concept?
yeah, sir, kind of. I have some.
Okay, tell me what's a multi-branching in Jenkins?
Sir, there would be a single branch basically now. For each and every this one, like for staging development, we'll be having different branches. So development part will take place in that branch. Staging will be taking in the different branch, and deployment will be taking the different branch. So each and everything will be automated. Once the particular branch is completed, it could be pushed on some other branch. Like example, development branch, staging to again deployment part. So each and every branch would perform their functionality. Once it is done, it will be passing on to this other branch.
Okay. I'll give you one scenario, and you tell me all the different tools that you will use.
Okay.
Okay. So, and what are the different overall configurations that the tool would require? So my current setup is I've got a web application and I want to deploy it at an instance where I've just committed the code. So let's say if I just changed the code, committed it on my branch, and I want this deployed into multiple environments. And if it has passed successfully all the test cases, then deployed into production. I don't want any manual step.
One
First
company.
question, first question, what are the tools that you will use? And bring an exhaustive list of all the tools that you can think of.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
So
You can think over it for 2 seconds and then give me an answer. Tell me about all the tools that you can think of.
yeah. So basically, what I do is that first development of the code is done. Once the development of the code is done, I would be using Docker for Dockerizing my application, just to have that CI/CD approach in that. So just Dockerizing my application. Then in order to make it perfect, like completely automated, CI/CD is the main thing. I will be using Jenkins for that, the complete CI/CD pipeline of that. And in case if I'm deploying with the help of Kubernetes, I'll be using Argo CD, which is a GitOps tool that plays a very vital role there. So Argo CD comes into the picture in the case of deployment part. With respect to my monitoring, I would be using Prometheus and Grafana for that, for
Mm-hmm.
monitoring my application. In case of any how is my application performing? Is my pod is down? What are the performance of my pod? Is there anything I have to change manually? So Prometheus and Grafana. Grafana is a best tool which I would think of, because it gives me a nice user interface where I can have the CPU time, how it's performing. Each and every metric can be come across with the help of Grafana. With respect to my security, which is the most important part, I'll be using Trivi for my Docker image scanning, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and this one OZAP scanning tool, and even Sonar Cube, which we can use, because each and every part of the code, when the code is committed, as you mentioned, that would be checked with help of Sonar Cube. That would be monitoring each and every code, and it will let me know any vulnerabilities are there, so that my
Mm-hmm.
code is secured, and my code is even monitored. My code is deployed with the help of Argo CD, and the whole CI/CD performed with the help of Jenkins.
Okay. Is there any monitoring tool that you can think of for monitoring for security analysis of containers or images?
Monitor, no sir,
Okay. All right. Now, one last question.
yes
So
sir.
when you've connected your Git to Jenkins,
Hmm.
how do you actually configure that once you have committed and pushed the code in Git, your Jenkins automatically picks it up? So what's the step of those configurations?
Yes, sir. The thing is that first main thing is in the Git repo, we have a concept called webhooks. There we have to configure our Jenkins. What are the details we get the user part of this one? So webhooks would be it's an easy step process. Just around it would take around 5 minutes just to configure that. And in Jenkins also, when we are declaring the pipeline, what we're doing, we have to mention our branch repo, where which are taking the repo, and we have to even mention a repo URL from which repo you are taking up that will be mentioned in the Jenkins part. With help of a Git, we have to mention a webhook. We have to define a webhook page.
Thank you, Pranav. I'm pretty happy with the way that you have answered. And given that you're just a fresher, I think that is commendable. You have done some practical hands-on on the tools, and that is what gives you the ability to answer these questions in a way. And I wish you all the best. So you have another interview today.